Welcome to How It All Started podcast in North Iowa. My name is Erick Nganyange, and my guest today is Mr. Lionel Foster. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Born in Monroe, Louisiana.
Correct.
And then moved to Mason City at age 3.
3 years old.
Why did your parents move to Mason City, out of all places in the United States?
My great-grandmother had relatives here. She had 3 sisters, I believe, that lived here and had migrated up here to Mason City. Now, I'm not absolutely sure why they moved up here. Many of them followed the railroad, Rock Island Railroad. My great-grandmother's sisters were living here, and then my mother and my grandmother decided they would move up here as well.
Your great-grandmother from your mom's side or your dad's
From my mom's side.
Mom's side. So she was here before. Where was she from? Was she from Louisiana?
Yeah, our whole family was from Monroe, Louisiana.
You guys have roots in Mason City for years then.
Well, we've been here since 1941.
So you moved here in 1941.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you and your brother, Leonard, at that time?
There's 3 of us. My sister was older than my brother. I had a twin brother.
Rest in peace. He passed in October 18th, 2022. And he was a little bit younger than you as
5
a twin.
minutes.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit in Louisiana.
Sure.
You were born in 1938.
Mm-hmm.
How old was your father then?
Oh, my goodness. That's a good question.
My question leading to that, was your grandfather a slave?
Yeah, let me give you a little history on my...
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I'm talking about my father's side of the family. My grandfather, my father's father, was an educator. He started the first elementary African-American or black school in Monroe, Louisiana. I'm not absolutely sure. There's been some questions about his origin. The speculation that I received, at least, was that my grandfather, on my dad's side, came from the island somewhere. I don't know which one it was. I'm trying to track that down through the ancestry thing. Now, the speculation, I get this from my niece. She says that he was adopted by some white parents here in the United States and brought over here to Monroe, Louisiana. Then he married, we call her Audie, that was my grandmother. And I understand that she was probably, at one point in her older life, was the kind of a nurse, county nurse in Monroe.
Was your father a teacher too?
He was a teacher too.
So he probably got that from your grandfather.
Right.
Yeah. How long did he teach? All his life?
Yeah. Let me do it this way. He taught up until, let me graduate up into that because it's a little more uniform. I had 2 uncles and an aunt. My 2 uncles, by virtue of my grandfather's raising, became doctors. One of my Uncle Robert, joined the Army during the Second World War, and he practiced his medicine over in Germany. He could doctor to the white troops over there in Germany. My other uncle, Uncle Madison, is named after my grandfather. He became a doctor as well and stayed in Monroe practicing medicine. When Uncle Robert came back from overseas, they wouldn't let him practice in Monroe with white patients. He could administer his medicine to black and poor whites, the farmer whites. They would trade their produce, eggs or milk or whatever they had, for his doctor's service, medical services.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And now these are your father's brothers?
Brothers.
Okay. Yeah. How many siblings your dad had?
His 2 brothers, and then he had a sister. He actually had 2 sisters, but one of them died, I think, earlier on. I think he told me childbirth.
Oh.
Yeah, we called her Aunt Gold. Her sister, I believe, died at childbirth.
So your father's side of the family is coming from well-educated.
They were educated.
How much you think that has a lot to do with your grandfather being a teacher?
I think he pushed education because then my father pushed education. My grandfather pushed education.
Were they older or the younger than your father, Robert and Madison?
They were younger.
Okay, was your father the oldest?
I think so.
Okay. So your father also ended up being the educator.
Right.
How long did he teach?
He taught all the way till he came up here to Mason City. And Iowa wouldn't let him teach unless he went back and got his bachelor's degree from a white college. And he had a master's degree from the Negro colleges that he attended. I think he went to Tuskegee and one of the other black colleges.
Yeah.
And so they told him, if you get your, from a accredited college, they called it, which was a white college, we'll let you teach here in the area. And so he became very frustrated over that and decided he wanted to continue to teach. So he moved back to Monroe. He left us here and he moved back to Monroe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he did not stay here for that long then, I'm guessing.
No, I think he stayed here maybe 4 years. I think because he and my mom were separated when we were probably 7 years old, around that area.
What did that do to you guys?
Well, we had a great-grandmother, mother, and a grandmother, and they were from the South, and it was, you mind.
Yep. A lot of whooping.
Yeah. And, that old joke about, go get the switch, and, the bigger one you get, the more you're going to get it, or the smaller one you get, the more you're going to get it. Yeah. So that's the discipline we raised them. We had my great-grandmother, we call her Mama, Ida Beaton. I remember once when my brother and I were in the house, we had tricycles that were given. Yeah. And she said, don't ride in the house. And so, we're ripping through the house, and she just happened to step out into the room, and I don't know if I hit her foot or my brother hit her foot or whatever it was. Anyway, tricycles and all, we wound up on the front porch. She just picked it up, and out the door we went. Now, today they probably would have called it child abuse. Oh, yeah. But I called it an awakening.
I bet you did not do that again.
I didn't do it again.
So now your father's going back to Louisiana, go back teaching, which it makes a lot of sense because he was probably super depressed those 4 years he was here.
Oh, yeah.
That I couldn't teach.
Yeah.
So do you think if we were able to teach, he would stay in Iowa and him and your mom would stay together?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I talked to him. I love my dad. I didn't get to know him that well, but I loved him. He was I think it came from my grandfather, his father. He always corrected your speech. He always said, your speech signals how intelligent you are. And he said, so you got to speak well. And if I say something off the street, as kids do, he'd correct it, and he'd correct it immediately. And let me jump back real quick. If you go back into the South, some of the folks who originated from slavery never did change their vernacular, if you will, because they weren't educated. And so they learned their language and their English as best they could with their own intellect. So they had a different way of speaking. And if you look at some of the Southern whites that were during that time, they were not very well spoken either. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you are a slave and you pick up on your master's language, then you're going to try and copy it. And if you come from Africa, for example, or from the islands, for example, you're trying to translate your language into theirs. So you come up with that broken diction, I call it. And so, instead of these, it's D's and that's and that sort of thing. I notice even today that some of these young kids are still speaking street. And I guess they think their parents didn't tell them to speak. Yeah. And so they're going to speak the way they learned it in the street.
So now you guys are here. Your late brother, Leonard, your sister in Mason City, Dad say, I got to keep teaching. I can't live like that. Mm-hmm. Move back to Louisiana. Then you guys going to school here. First, you went to public school, then ended up in Catholic school.
Yeah, we started out at McKinley, which was up on the north part of Mason City. When we first came here, we moved up on North Quincy Avenue.
Okay.
And so McKinley School was probably half a mile or less.
Yeah.
And we walked there to school every day.
Can't do that today.
Can't do that.
Too cold outside.
Right, yeah. Well, we walked in the cold.
Yeah.
In the snow, too.
Do you think we became softer as a kid?
Yeah. I think the kids complained to the parents, and the parents, and I don't say this pejoratively, but the parents became a little more distant from their kids than when I came up, to the extent the parents had to go out and get a job, mom had to work.
Yeah.
And so, it's easier to, depend on the teachers to be the parent than it is for us, because they're going to be with them all day and I'll be at work all day.
Yeah.
So you have that break in there from when I came up. My mom worked too, but my grandmother was there. If my mom wasn't there, or my great-grandmother was there. So there's always a parent around.
I like that word you use, distance. Because now I got to go to work at 6 in the morning. Mm-hmm. I'm dropping my kid at the daycare. Mm-hmm. The daycare people watching over him or her. Mm-hmm. And then the bus driver probably stop by at the daycare, pick him up, drop them off at school. Mm-hmm. Being at school all day until 3. Mm-hmm. By the time I'm coming home, I got to get them something to eat. Mm-hmm. I'm already beat up. I've been working all day. Now I'm looking at it. Probably as a parent, we spend less time with our kids than everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the distance you're talking about.
The distance, right. Because when you have to make sure I've got to be somewhere near for my child when they get out of school.
Yeah.
So, if it's at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever it is. Now, if it goes to 5 o'clock, then you've got to make arrangements for someone else to make sure your child's at home. And the older the child gets, then the child becomes by themselves at home, and they're trying to maneuver on their own, if you will. There's no parental guidance.
Yeah, and they prone to getting into more trouble.
Exactly
that way.
Yeah, and then the deeper we got into this system, the more dependent the parents became of the schools.
Yeah,
and they depended. They said, well, schools, and I don't think they did openly, but I think they did subconsciously and in their gestures, if you will.
Yeah,
we want you to make sure our kids are taken care of well, that they're safe and blah 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 blah. And so if something happened, then they blame the schools if something happened to their child.
And then another problem is that, oh man, I love the word distance you use, because of course at the school, the teacher will have distance too, because he or she have 25 kids in a class.
Exactly.
The kid is getting the distance at home, and then also distance at school.
At school, because then you are subjected to your own initiative, and if you don't have a lot of initiative, you're not going to push. If you're a kid at home and you're saying, well, mom doesn't hug me or dad doesn't hug me enough and talk to me enough and they're not close enough to me, I'll kind of move myself to my own little cove somewhere.
Stay in that room more than anything else.
Right, or I'll grab now it's a cell phone.
Yeah.
So now they've got these things you put on your eyes and it takes you into reality.
Take you to virtual reality.
Virtual reality. Can you imagine how many young kids' minds that's going to destroy? They're already living in a fantasy world as it is. When I was a child, I created my own entertainment in my mind.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a quick example of that. My grandmother used to read to us on Sunday the funnies. We'd all sit there on the side of the bed with her, and she'd sit up and all the comics all the way through. I mean, be an hour's worth of it. And she had animated. And she got to the one on Superman once, and she was saying bird flayed all stuff and blah, blah, blah. So I left, we finished, and I left, and I went out, and I said, boy, and my mind was on Superman flying. So I went over and I grabbed a shirt and I tied it around my neck, and I went out on the front porch, and the wind was kind of blowing, and my imagination had me, I jumped off the steps, and my imagination had me flying as Superman would fly. Yeah, and I thought to myself, and I still think about that today, and I thought to myself, well, how silly that was, but it's a child's reaction.
Yep.
So now you've got this virtual reality that's going to put those thoughts in your mind, and you're going to be, who knows what you're going to be looking at.
What do you think that will do to our society in the next 30, 40, 50 years?
I think it's going to take away the child's ability to use their imagination creatively, guidance.
Ooh.
There's going to be nobody there to guide them. Wait a minute, you're looking at something that's not real.
Are you concerned?
Oh, I'm concerned. I'm concerned to this extent. We're having more kids. If you notice all the shootings that are taking place, some kid is one that they're prosecuting his parents now. It was okay for him to have a weapon. It was okay for him to fantasize and to write all this stuff. And nobody checked on him.
Yeah.
Or at least if the parents did, they didn't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
He winds up killing several children. Now, what's that going to do to the child who's not very mentally strong?
Yeah.
And they're more perceptive to that sort of thing. We've lost our bearing as far as discipline. I think that's why we have so much chaos and bickering back and forth between all these people. We've lost our bearing on it because there's no respect. No, you don't have any respect for politicians. Some of them don't deserve respect. I know that, but some don't have respect for their clergy. They don't have respect for some don't have respect for their parents. My mom didn't let me do this. My dad told me I couldn't go here, and I'm angry with them, so I'm going to act out.
Do you think we lost respect with each other as the member of society?
To a certain degree, because we don't speak in terms. My grandmother always had a saying: if you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything at all. And I think we've lost that direction, not hers, but societally. We lost that direction. If somebody doesn't fit our mode or our mental picture of what they should do or shouldn't be, we're going to make some nasty comment about them instead of just ignoring it and walking away from it.
Or maybe trying to learn. Trying to learn something you probably did not know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not because you were raised that way. The other way is wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're nervous about how our society is going to turn out.
Yeah.
With our young minds.
Yeah, and I've got probably 13 great-grandkids now. I'm concerned about what's going to happen to them in the future because we keep going off that, I say the deep end, until I see as Americans, we can bring this thing back to a civilized society. We're not going to, we're going to lose the future generation.
How do we do that? How do we bring back to the
That's a good
civilized
question.
society?
I wish I had the answer. Obviously God's out of our picture now, but I don't want to preach. But once you remove the idea
of higher power,
you're gonna lose it because you become the higher power.
So there's a saying: "Old men for counsel, young men for war." Mm-hmm. Do you think we lost that counsel from the classical generation, like you had from your grandmother? Do you think we lost that a little bit?
Yeah, I think we've lost it. As an example, I enlisted in the Marine Corps because I thought I don't say it was my patriotic duty, but I decided, a bunch of us decided in high school, what are you going to do after you graduate? And there weren't a whole lot of jobs back in 1956. We couldn't see it. So, there was a bet, let's join the military. And then the guy said, let's join the Marine Corps. I think it was seven or eight of us decided we were going to go down to the recruiting office and sign up. So we had a bet, the last one down there, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's only 4 of us that showed up, and 3 of us signed up. Eddie Nadine, my brother, and I can't remember the other guy that was there, signed up. And the other guys didn't show up. And the draft was up at that time. So we didn't have to worry about the draft. We'd already selected our service. And as I found out later on, some of them did get drafted. I don't know where they went to. We said that was our obligation. We were going to do it, first of all. But more importantly, it was a job, something to do. You're not going to get kids to enlist the military now.
No.
Particular young guys. I don't know how they're going to do it. I think about that quite often. How do you get back to square one? Not all of square one was ideal for America or for African Americans, but square one was better in the context of how you're going to learn and how you're going to survive in this country. Now, because if we look at our society and African Americans particularly, we talk about how many are incarcerated. Well, yeah, they're incarcerated. And why are they incarcerated? Because they had no discipline.
So you and your brother went to, and your sister probably went to the same school, McKinley?
Yeah, McKinley, and then we moved to we call the south end of Mason City. Went down to Grant School.
Okay.
And we stayed in Grant for probably a couple of years. And this is something I sometimes look back on. I've never heard the word incorrigible. When I didn't know what I heard it, but I didn't know what it meant. Anyway, my brother and I got home one day, and my mom was there, and she says, "Well, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of getting these reports on you and your brother. You just won't mind." And we're saying, "What are you talking about? What's going on?" So I'm going to correct that problem. And so she says, "We're going to take you up to St. Joe Catholic School." We get up there.
Were you guys Catholics at that time?
No, we were Baptists. We were going to St. John's Baptist Church, which is the building still here in Mason City.
Yeah.
And we were going there every Sunday. And I'll get to that in a quick second. And so we wind up there, and my mother introduces us to the principal, who's a nun.
Yeah.
And I see these nuns with their habits on, and they have their arms inside these big sleeves, and I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, wow, it's going." I didn't think they had any arms, I'm just a little kid, And so I found out later on they do.
Especially if you don't act right.
That's right. That's right. And so she says, and I'm sure that you're gonna mind. You're gonna mind, okay? Because we going to Grant School, it was a great little school, public school, but I guess we were getting into activities that we weren't. I don't know what I can't recall what they were, except we were kids of kids.
Yeah, was that the one you guys used to call United Nation? Grant School, because there was so many nationality in that school.
Yeah, we had the most integrated school in Mason City. We had almost every nationality you can think of. And all grew up together in the same neighborhood, and you could go from school to home. I can guarantee you somebody knows what you're doing, and they're reporting to your parents
before you get home.
Before you get home.
Yeah.
So the state decided, well, you're going to have to bust some of those kids out, and the principal called me up once and said, you need to come over here, and I want to chat with you about it. And I said, well, my kids were going there then. And I said, no, I'm not going to buy into that. They've got one high school here.
Yeah.
And they're all going to congregate at that high school when they get out of these little area or neighborhood schools. And so they might as well get used to knowing the people they're going to be dealing with. In other words, you've got an integrated school. The whites and the Hispanics and the Greek kids that were there and all the other nationalities.
Yeah. You say your kids went to Grant School? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, really? When was the Grant School closed?
Oh, I'm trying to think what year it was.
Because for some reason I thought it was closed.
It would have closed. I went to work for the city in 1972,
Yeah.
And I think it closed shortly after that, probably 73 or 74, somewhere in that time frame.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to cycle back to you going from grant school to Catholic school. Is that
Catholic school?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was an experience, and I loved it. I mean,
Okay.
The older I got, I loved it, because I'll get to that in a second. So anyway, my brother and I get there, and there's another set of African American twins that were there. There's probably I'd say 8 or 10 altogether African American kids are going. They're all Catholics, going
Except
to St.
you
John,
guys.
except us. And nuns have a way of persuasion that I always sit back and scratch my head on. They'll drop the hint to you, and then the next thing you know, you're doing what they want you to do.
Without forcing you
Well,
to.
yeah. So they said, this one nun said, well, we want you to take up catechism. Okay, well, take up catechism. You're in a Catholic school, take up catechism. Yeah. And so, and we're going to have some classes over here after school. So my brother and I and my sister had already gotten into it.
Oh, at that time, your sister was already in that Catholic school?
She was up there. Well, she went up. I think she went up. I don't know if we all went there together or not. I can remember Leonard and I going there.
Yeah.
My mom.
Now, this was not free.
No.
The Catholic school was not free.
No. They I'm trying to remember what the term you used, but they allowed us to. My mom didn't have to pay for it.
Okay.
Sponsorship.
Yeah. Okay.
Sponsorship.
I was about to say that's a lot for your mom for 3 kids going there.
Got there, and then they talked. This one nun says, "Well, boy, you and your brother would really look nice as altar boys." And so I don't know what do you mean altar boys? And they took us. We learned the mass. Next thing you know, we're altar boys. We're serving at the same time, and
at this time, you guys still going to the St. John Baptist Church?
No, we'd quit going there.
Oh, so you guys converted to
over
Catholicism?
Yeah, got baptized. They got our sponsors, if you will.
Yeah,
and got baptized and as Catholics, and then became altar boys and served masses and stuff.
How did the member of St. John Baptist Church felt?
I don't think I never did hear anything negative about it.
Okay.
Because my grandmother and my mother kept going there.
Oh.
And
so just you, your mom, and your brother and your sister converted to Catholicism?
No, my mom didn't ever convert.
It was just you kids?
Yeah, just the kids.
And your mom was just...
She was baptized Baptist, and my grandma was baptized Baptist. My great-grandma was baptized Baptist. They continued to go to St. John's Church.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I was going to mention about St. John's Church. After I got to the Catholic side of it, I started thinking, well, you did me a favor, Mom, because on Sunday, you got up and you went to Sunday school at St. John's. You had another gathering at 11 o'clock. You were at church until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, it was a Sunday day of religion.
Yeah. We want to make sure you get everything for the rest of the week.
After the week, and you're hearing the preacher up there shouting and hollering at you all that time. And then, of course, when you're in, the kids have their little sessions. They got someone there teaching you the Bible, and they had lunch and all that stuff. I mean, you almost spent a whole day in there. So, and the other thing is you didn't act up. I mean, if you rustle in the seat in the pew.
Yeah,
you get slapped upside your head while you're sitting in church, and the preacher wouldn't break his cadence.
Which you thinking about little kids? It's like, how long can they sit still?
I know it. That's what happens.
It's like from Sunday school to 3 p.m. Like, come on, you got to give them a break. Yeah. So you guys going to Catholic church, the service, 1 hour, you out.
You're out. You're out. That's it. Sometimes 45 minutes, and you're out there. Yeah.
So that was much better than St. John.
Oh, yeah.
Now, were you guys just the kids going to the Catholic church? Mm-hmm. And moms and grandma and...
You went to Baptist.
That's interesting, the fact that your mom, number one, wanted you guys to go to Catholic school. And I'm assuming this was more for
Discipline.
Academic and discipline?
Discipline.
Discipline.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know who she was talking to, had talked to, but, somebody apparently says, well, if your kids are acting up and they're not doing what they're supposed to do over at grand school, then put them in Catholic school because those nuns will take care of them.
Yeah.
They did.
So hindsight 2020, you look back,
yeah.
you glad your mom did that?
I say this, that between her transferring us over to Catholic schools and the discipline we had in the home, I was able to get through the boot camp in Marine Corps. The discipline was nothing in the Marine Corps compared to what I went through as a kid coming up, because I knew what I had to do. By the time I got to the Marine Corps, they said, hit the ground, you hit the ground. You didn't argue with it. You just did what you're supposed to do. And I did. And the other thing I said, and I didn't wind up in jail. I could have wound up in jail, but I never did wind up in jail.
That's a huge credit.
Oh, yeah.
And how much, and I'm sure that discipline probably transfer to your life, your career, going forward to become the man that you became.
The time I went in the Marine Corps in 56, corporal punishment was the order of the day with the drill instructors. They could beat up on you, and there's nothing you could do about it except complain. And don't complain too hard because you're going to get some.
You're going to get it again.
Yeah, going to get it again.
So how long you guys were in Catholic school before? Because you ended up moving. You did not graduate high school here,
right.
Did you? You ended up moving to Indiana.
Right.
With the South Bend, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
How long were you here, and why did you guys move?
Because my mom and dad then decided to get a divorce because he had moved. He couldn't handle it. He had to get back to his teaching profession.
Okay.
So he went back to Monroe, and they were communicating distantly, and then decided, well, this ain't going to work, And she had gotten a job at the Jefferson Bus Depot here in Mason City. She went in as a cook. She could cook like crazy.
Oh, really?
Of course, all of them could anyway.
They're from Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she started out in the kitchen just doing, I call, preps type stuff, general stuff. And she wound up managing the kitchen. So when she and my dad decided to get a divorce, or separate and then to get a divorce, my grandfather lived in South Bend, Indiana, her dad. And he said, well, come on out here. You can get a job out here, and you'll have somebody to help you with the kids, and so on and so on. So we packed up, and my grandmother stayed here. Mother dear stayed here, and she lived in Manly. And it's because she had married Mr. Traylor, who worked on the Rock Island Railroad. And that brought a lot of black folks here to the railroad. And so we moved out there for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because when I graduated out of high school, that's when I joined the Marine Corps.
Okay, so did you join the Marine Corps right after high school? 56?
Yeah, I went in. I told her one day, I said, my mom one day, I said, there's not much going on here. And I'm thinking about joining the military. Oh, that's fine. I thought she'd talk me out of it. Oh, that's fine. I said, okay. And so I joined. My brother and I joined. And so I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, and then decided to come back here to Mason City.
So that's probably the 1960 you're coming back?
1960, right.
Why did you want to come back to Mason City in the 60s?
Yeah, I still don't know. I know I had an opportunity. Bendix Aviation Corporation was stationed in South Bend, Indiana, and my whole career in the Marine Corps was a aircraft hydraulics mechanic.
Oh.
And so Bendix made hydraulic equipment, and I contacted them, and they said, well, come on out, and with your military experience, we'll interview you for a job. And I said, that sounds fine. Well, there was nobody there then, because my mother had moved back out here to Mason City, and my sister had moved back out here.
Your mother moved back to Mason City from South Bend?
Yeah.
Well, did she move back after you guys moved? Or
no, she moved back while we were in the Marine Corps.
Okay. So those 4 years while you guys in the Marine Corps, she came back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I said, well, I don't know if I want to stay out here in South Bend, Indiana. Anyway, South Bend was a nice town, but to me, I just didn't see a future in South Bend. So I came back out here, and the rest is history. But
1960s. You are what old? Late 20s?
Oh, no, I was
early 30s.
20. I went at 18, and I was
Coming back. So 22, 20,
Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
So you're a young man when the civil rights movement.
Yeah,
We're going.
I had some experience in the Marine Corps that I tell my kids about. They talk about it. Truman had desegregated the military. It hadn't been desegregated.
But they say he's desegregated in 48?
Yeah, they wasn't desegregated. I mean, to this extent it wasn't. Because all the stations, all my military service was done in the South, Virginia, Tennessee.
Oof.
I got on a bus down in Memphis, Tennessee when I was doing a training camp down there. I got on the front of the bus, and the guy just sat there looking at me. He said, I'm not going to move this bus until you do what you're supposed to do.
Did you know you were not supposed to sit in front of the bus?
I hadn't paid any attention to it.
Oh.
I came out of South Bend, Indiana, out of Mason City. I could ride the bus. I could
anywhere. Yeah, you can sit anywhere you want to sit.
Sit anywhere you want to. Yeah. Yeah, and so I looked in the back, and all the black folks are sitting in the back.
Yeah.
So I had to get off the front of the bus, walk all the way to the back door, and get on there. And as I got on the bus.
So was it blocked?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could not use the front door
you couldn't walk through.
It's a real segregation.
Yeah, you had to get off and go all the way.
So there was two doors in the bus.
You had the front door
for the white people.
Yeah, and black folks, you pay your fare up front, then you had to get off and go to the back door and get on. When I got on the bus, there were two women sitting there. I'll never forget it. One woman shaking her head, smiling. The other one was mad at me. She looking at me like, what do you think?
You're going to get us in trouble.
Yeah.
You were one of those.
Yeah.
Breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Stay on your lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did that experience did to you? Because that was you heard about that all day.
I was in it.
You was right in it, but now it's like it happened to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It happened to me there. When I was down in Jacksonville, Florida, I went down there on what I call maneuvers. I was going to catch a bus and come back to Mason City on Liberty. I had an uncle who lived in Green Cove Springs, Florida. And so I'd go down there during the week or whenever I could get off and visit with him. But to come back to take my leave, come back to Mason City, back to South Bend, rather, I had to catch the bus, and I went to the bus station. I had my uniform on. And I went in the front door of the bus station, and the guy was standing there, must have been a security guard, didn't have a gun on, and he says, "Can I help you?" I wanted to get a pop or something to get my ticket. He said, "Well, you have to go out and go around to the side." So I had to come all the way out the front door, go all the way around the side, and to the back they had a little person there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get my bus ticket there, and if I wanted to get a pop or something, they could hand me a pop and I'd pay for it. And I thought to myself, this is interesting. I got my uniform on, and I'm in a military, Jacksonville, Florida, and a military base is in Jacksonville, Florida. Yeah, and I thought to myself, now, how did you desegregate the military, and they're still doing this thing?
What do you think that meant when they're talking about Truman desegregate the military? Or was there just publicity? I
think it was more publicity, and I think what he said, we're not going to have segregated barracks for the military people. The bases won't be segregated. The ranks will be open for all to move up. Whether you're black or white, you come in as in a Marine Corps private to a sergeant. That's going to be open to you.
Yeah.
But as far as off base, you're in the South, and you're still facing the same thing.
Yeah. Now, young man at 22, you're moving back to Mason City basically to start a life of your own. Coming from Marine Corps, what's the first job are you getting in the Mason City?
When I first got back, I couldn't find a job. You couldn't buy a job in Mason City. Yeah.
Not that you couldn't find a job. You couldn't buy a job.
Couldn't buy a job.
Wow.
And I looked all over the place. And I mean, so my first year out, I moved up to Manly where my grandmother was. And I drew unemployment. And probably about 6 months of that, I got sick and tired of it because I've been active since I was 13 years old. So I said, well, let me go down to Mason City, moved down to Mason City, and see if I can find something to do down there. Well, the first job I got down here was working for Wood Motor Company, their Volkswagen dealership, washing cars and cleaning up around the place. It was $50 a week. Well, it's a job. I'll take it. Then I found out they had called Central States Auto Auction was here at the time. They're one of the biggest car auctions in the Midwest at the time. And so I went out there and I'd work on the day of the auction, driving cars through the auction ring and then hauling cars around, around the countryside, if you will. If a dealer bought a car from Minnesota, we could haul the car back up to Minnesota for them. I think I didn't get on construction until 69. I think I started working on construction because construction pretty much opened up because they had more jobs and they didn't have enough people to fill them.
So from 60s all the way to 69, you were working these job, car washing cars, doing a car auction and stuff like that.
Driving cars.
Yeah. Then in 69, you got in construction.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stick around on the 60 a little bit because there's a lot going on in there. Civil Rights Act passed 1964, Voting Rights 1965. Dr. King and Malcolm X, all these guys pop up. Did you guys look at them as the way we look back at them today, or there were so many other people were in the front line fighting for the civil rights, and these guys were just basically the spokespeople? Because I hear that a lot.
Yeah, they were basically the spokespeople for it.
For the movement.
The movement, yeah. It wasn't something that I had expected to happen. Now, because of the prejudice that was still hovering over America heavily, and in Mason City, there was a negative reaction from the white community that these are troublemakers. And I'm sitting in the labor temple trying to get on a construction job one morning with Bill Leitner, African-American guy, who was part of the fabric of Mason City, if you will, here for quite a few years. And the business agent walks up there and says, "How you doing, Bill?" And Bill, "Great." He says, "Bill says, I got my friend here." He says he's looking for a job and got some things going. You can help him out here. And as Bill and he are talking, he pops up and says to Bill, "Well, you know that King guy's got a rally going. I don't know where it was at the time." He says, "But I'll tell you something." He says, "It better not happen around here." He says, "Because if it is, they won't get a job here," or something like that. And looked at me, and I thought to myself, what's he talking about? And Bill kind of chuckled it off and said something to him. And as he walked away, I said, "What's that all about, man?" And he says, "Oh, don't pay attention to that." And I said, "I mean, was he insinuating that if I join the movement, that I won't get a job here?" He said, "Oh, don't pay any attention to him." I said, "Okay." And I was angry about it, So I played in and out of that labor temple for quite a while until the jobs ran out.
What was the black population in Mason City in the 60s?
Oh, in the 60s, it was. We had a lot. I can't go by number.
Yeah,
we had a lot of black families here in the community. I had been here for quite a while. Even when I was a kid growing up here, we had a lot of black families that migrated up here. St. John's Church was and we had three African American churches with St. John's, and we had one on Adams. I can't remember.
I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah,
I heard about it. I cannot remember the name.
Yeah, and then there was one near East Park it was more integrated.
Okay.
And we had some black folks that went to that church too. I don't know if that was Baptist or Lutheran or whatever the denomination was. When I say sizable, I'd say 100.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What was the feeling like when the Kennedy assassination, Dr. King assassination, especially Dr. King assassination with the black folks in Mason City, or was it the same as everybody else in the country?
I don't know about the other. See, Mason City was never really town where you talked about civil rights. And I don't know why. I mean, all the years that I had the job as a human rights director, they didn't like the idea of it. I don't know if they didn't know what the civil rights movement was, and they felt threatened by it, or they just didn't like the idea of African Americans, protesting. I don't know what their feelings were. I didn't get a whole lot of negative reaction from individuals on it.
Yeah.
They normally don't speak about it.
1972, you start working for the city.
Mm-hmm.
So officially, you became the director of Human Rights Commission 1978.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from 1972, what are you doing for the city?
I was a community aide.
Okay.
The city had gotten into an urban renewal plan, and we had a gentleman, Jack Lehman, and Jack said, what are you doing? And I said, what's going on? He said, well, I need a community aide, because I attended a couple of their sessions. They were going to the different neighborhoods saying, we're going to bring urban renewal into Mason City, and we're going to, the blight that's here, we're going to clean it up, and in housing, we're going to be into housing, that sort of thing. And he said, so I want you to, I'd hire you to come in and be a community aide, and you would meet with folks in the Grant area neighborhood. That's where they would start out with the project. And you'll hold meetings there. You'll talk to the neighbors, because most of the folks down there anyway, because I was raised in the area, and see what their feelings are and get some suggestions, etc. So I didn't think I was qualified for something like that. And I said, well, I don't have a whole lot of education, Jack. I went to high school. Oh, don't worry about that. He says, just tell me you want a job, and I'll see what I can do. So I chatted with him. He hired me as a community aide. And so that's basically what I did then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did that from 72 until this.
I had she wasn't really a cousin, kind of a dude.
Yeah.
We adopt our extended family members. She worked for him, Lamar Weber, and they had to have an affirmative action director. HUD wanted the city to do that. And an affirmative action person had to work on fair housing issues to make sure Mason City had an open program for fair housing, no discrimination in housing. And so she did that job for, a couple of years. And then she got a job, some other state, and she told Lionel can take this job over when I move out. So they gave me that job. So I started out as affirmative action officer, and then we got into the fair housing issue, and HUD said, well, you're going to have an ordinance where you can enforce fair housing, and you're going to have a body there, a board, who can oversee it. Well, they already had a Human Rights Commission, but it wasn't an official type. It wasn't by ordinance. So anyway, I got together with the city attorney and drafted up an ordinance for the Human Rights Commission, and presented it to the group of folks who were here.
City council?
No, this claiming to be the Human Rights Commission.
Oh.
They were nice people. Most of them were business people. And basically what they were here to do was make sure no complaints came forward. It was an interesting situation.
Yeah.
The first time the city attorney and I, Mike Dunn was the city attorney tonight, we appeared before them and said, here's what Mike said, I'm recommending the ordinance be passed where you're above, for housing and employment and the whole thing. Copied after the Iowa Civil Rights Statute. And one of the commissioners says, well, let's just you're trying to make work or create work or something like that. What?
Supposed to be working.
Yeah. And the chair, I found out later on, if someone had a complaint, they came to her in City Hall at the city clerk's desk, and you explained out there in the open public what your complaint was. And they take notes, and then we'll look into it for you.
Yeah.
And we'll get back to you and let you know what's going on. No investigation, no confidentiality, none of that stuff. So when I got into it and shut all of that down, I had some some of them jumped ship. They didn't like it. They didn't like the idea of it. It's going to create problems here in town, blah, 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 blah. And so I said, no, I'm going to structure it like the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. You're going to have a commission that's going to be active, and they're going to do what they're supposed to do. They'll put on seminars. They'll educate the public and all of that. So that's when I got into that part of it.
You were the head of the commission from 78 until 2013, when things went left. And we're going to get to that a little bit. I don't know how much of that you can talk. And so that's 35 years of your life. You did that work. How much improvement do you think, how much impact do you think you had in the city in the 35 years as a director of Human Rights Commission?
Well, I can't take the credit for it. I can take the credit for the people that I had on my commission who were very involved and very active.
All the leaders never take credit. They always want to take the stab of the blame and pass the recognition to everybody else. All right, go ahead, Mr. Lionel. But always remember, fish right from the head.
But we had, I had really a couple of chair people who were get out there and do their thing.
Yeah,
Marcia Stash was one of my leaders. She was disabled, so she pushed the disability issue, and she would go and talk to the businesses and say, your building isn't accessible, And she'd come back to me and say, "What can we do about it?" I said, "Well, then what we should do is to work with them and see if we can find some way to make their building accessible." And one quick story on that. I called in. I had a grant from HUD. HUD says, "Okay, we're doing an accessibility initiative here and across the country. We want to make sure that facilities are accessible to handicap." I hired this guy to come in from Kansas City, I think it was. He was an architect engineer and very schooled in accessibility issues. And he went around to different buildings, in particular apartment buildings, and checked on them to make sure that whoever was disabled could get in and out of the building, and that the apartments were
set up that way. Yeah.
And he came back, and we had a list of folks whose buildings were not accessible. And when I sent the information out to him, I had one contractor, apartment owner. I knew him too, and he came up and he was just livid. And I said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you." I won't mention his name, but I don't know what to tell you, but that apartment building should not have been approved to be occupied because it doesn't meet a disability, the law, because the law has been in effect quite a while. And so he went upstairs to talk to the building people, and and they had a row up there, I guess, about it. And so those some of the things I got into. How much impact did I have? I don't know, really. I know that once the...
Let me phrase the question this way. How many enemies did you create in town?
Oh, a lot of enemies.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of enemies.
Yeah. So that usually tells a lot.
Oh, yeah, a lot of enemies. I had enemies. I had... and most of them were in the
business,
in the business industry. They wanted to manage their employees the way they wanted to manage them, and I should keep my nose out of it,
regardless of the law.
Yeah, and what went on inside of their doors or inside of their structures were their business, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, keep your nose out of our business here. So,
was there any time, because there was so much probably dislike of you in the business community, was there any time you was like, this is not worth it?
Yeah, I had that feeling on several occasions. I said, because of all of the negative feedback, I had council members, who would tell the mayor, so-and-so contacted me about what Foster's doing and blah, 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 blah. Ken Q was the mayor at the time. And Ken and I got along quite well. And I'd go in his office and sit down and we'd chat about it. And I'd say, "Here's what the deal is, Ken. It's the law. I says, tell them it's the law. I'm only here to, you want to shoot the messenger.
Yeah,
that's fine. But go to the people who sent the message.
Make the law. Yeah, yeah. So with all that was going on, the 2013 blow up did not surprise you.
No,
because you kind of saw it. It slowly it's coming.
Oh, I knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm. So it was the matter of, in your mind, you're like, okay, the moment they get the business world, get the mayor they want, get the city council they want, it's going to be a war.
Exactly.
And you knew you was going to be on a chopping block.
Yeah. I had there was one, I won't mention his name. There's one council member that I think took it on as his personal effort. That was his duty to do something about that guy. My office, they had a conference room on the other side of my office, the wall on the other side of my office. And he was sitting there at a budget meeting and said, yeah, we'll cut his budget and we'll put the park and recreation pointed at my office. The person that told me about it. And I said, okay, I'll keep my eye on him. So every time the issue on the budget came up, and we had more federal money than we had
the city
money. And it came up, well, we can't afford this and we can't afford, we got to, blah, 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 blah on the budget. And I said, well, here we go. This is going to be another attempt. And then I had three actually of the council people who said, we're not going to let that happen.
They're not going to let it happen. They mean they're not going to let the budget get cut.
Cut my budget. Yeah, because they want to cut it in half, which meant that it cut my position out. We'll keep the commission. We're going to cut the salary out so he won't be there.
You think for them was not about the Human Rights Commission? It was more
me.
You? So it was personal.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There was a business here in Mason City. They're a debt collection business. They had moved their operation from downtown, I think it was, out to the new addition out there in
the one by Walmart there?
Yeah, Indian Head. I had complaints from some of the female employees that they had a guy in there who was pretty grossly, sexually harassing them. So we took the complaint, started investigating the complaint, and found out from some of the other females that this was a common practice for this individual. So we filed a complaint. Well, they filed a complaint, and we started to litigate the complaint, if you will, investigate. Well, the company, when they moved out, they got money from the city for their move. And I can't remember I know the number was $300,000.
Oh, wow.
And as a result of receiving the $300,000, they had to increase their employment population. Manager went to the city council one evening when the money came due and said, well, these are my words, we can't pay you right now because we can't build our workforce up because of your human rights guy. These complaints that keep coming in, they keep filing against us, hurts our ability to keep staff or get staff on or something to that extent. So that's when it all started.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so the mayor at the time, I made a comment, well, we need to look into it. So when I found I didn't attend that council meeting, I heard about it from someone who was there.
Yeah.
And I contacted the mayor and I said, well, why would you make that comment that we're
going to look into it?
I said, I'm doing the job that I'm hired to do.
Yeah.
And you want me to explain it to you? And I said, well, I know, Lionel, I know. I said, well, no, you're raising the ire of these folks in Mason City that I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And they said, well, I'm sure you guys will handle it. The commission will handle it okay. That was the end of our discussion. Long story short, he couldn't pay the money back, so the city said, well, you're going to have to pay it back because that's the agreement. So that set off the chain reaction. And from that point on, I said, well, it's just a matter of time now because that's when this new mayor Bookmeyer got into office. And he decided he was going to come after me because the guy who made the complaint from the agency was a friend of his, and the guy who managed the agency's son was on Bookmeyer's campaign.
Oh, now it becomes Real personal.
Real personal. So then it was the matter of trying to line up enough council people to
line up with the agenda.
Exactly, and cut that budget so where he's gone. And the year before 2012, one of the council members was ill and was in the hospital with a cold and knew what they were going to do. And he got up out of his hospital bed, attended the council meeting so he could vote and tie the vote so they couldn't cut my budget.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that council member who was sick, he was aligned with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they wanted to vote it when he was in the hospital.
And they would have been able to cut the budget that time. Well, they would have. There would have only been 3 votes because there was actually 3 council members who supported the commission and supported the office. But if he hadn't shown up, they would have cut the budget that year, and that would have been in 2012, and I would have been gone then.
And they wanted to go from $145,000 a year to $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's where they ended up cutting down to it.
Right.
Which means that was eliminating your salary completely.
Completely.
If you out of there, you out of job,
Mm-hmm.
they can control everything else that's going in the commission.
Yeah, and it could only operate off the federal money that I had drawn in there. And that would only cut my assistant there. And then she couldn't do much on her own except, process complaints if they came in. It was really an interesting experience. And then I had 2 of the people on my commission, one of them who was on their side.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He wanted my job eliminated before July 1st. July 1st is when the budget runs out.
Yeah.
He wanted my job. He wanted me out of there before then. Yeah.
So on July 1st, 2013, your position basically got eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
You were 75 at that time.
Yeah.
Were you thinking about retirement at that time? Or no, you were just like...
I'd kept going. Yeah, I'd have been there till today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So then, of course, you sue the mayor, you sue the city council, and no matter how you look at it, they settled the case. You won the case.
And I wanted to litigate it. My attorney, Roxanne Collins, probably one of the
best. Probably one of the best ones.
Right.
Then what are you doing at age 75? You've been doing this for 35 years. What is Lionel thinking about? You can't go back in construction.
Oh, I could have. I had a contractor offer me a job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, doing cement. I didn't take it. And I thought about doing that, and I said, no, I don't want to do that. And then I started getting involved I'm on Elder Bridge board now, and I work with them.
I want to touch on something else about your brother. When your brother passed, I read somewhere from the time you guys were born, your twin brother, from the time you guys were born, were basically inseparable.
Mm-hmm.
Very close together. First, have you got a chance to grieve? And how much are you thinking about your own mortality?
Let me answer the last question first.
Yeah.
I don't think about it. I've never thought about it. And my grandfather, on my mom's side, didn't like to think about death. And my grandmother, my step-grandmother actually said, well, he doesn't want to think about it because he knows where he's going, meaning he's going to go to hell. And I said, well, I don't know if that's the case or not. And then a friend of mine, Billy Woolery, he never did like to get involved in any discussion about death and that sort of thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and his wife said pretty much the same thing. Well, that rotten life you lived, you know what's at the end of the tunnel for you, But I don't think of it in that context. I have my faith, and I just say, well, what's going to happen is going to happen. Death is inevitable, and so why grieve before the grieving
before it
comes?
happened? Yeah,
I mean, why?
You die twice.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
you do.
Interesting. They say everybody on this planet has an assignment to do before they die. I mean, whatever you can call purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You think you lived yours?
I think about that quite often to this extent. a lot of things that I have been involved in just happen. They just pop up in my head, and I check into it, and suddenly I'm involved in it for some reason. Like Elderbridge, for example. I'm involved in a project now. We're trying to get money for return to community for folks who are ill, elderly people who are ill in the hospital or in a daycare facility, nursing home facility, can go back home. And we'll try and provide some care in home so they're more comfortable there and they got someone to watch over them. That just popped up in my head one day, and the funding of it. So that was 2.5 years ago, and finally I've gotten to the point I've got several people that said, hey, that's a pretty good idea. I've had someone else help me put together a proposal to take down to the governor and to the Iowa legislature. And so those are the type of things that happen. When they come up, somebody's telling me to do it, and they seem to materialize. So that's the type of thing I do. You
got a volunteer award was it July 2022 from the governor? What's that all about?
That's probably the fourth one I've received.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I go back to my first one. I think was with I don't know if Bob Ray gave me one or not. I know I got one from Branstad. I got one from Vilsack, and I got one from Reynolds. I've been on different boards and commissions. For example, I was with the Child Advocacy Board when it first started here in Mason City.
CASA.
And I was there was, I think, 27 of us started out, and only half of that wound up becoming actual CASAs.
Okay.
And you familiar with the program?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for being the beginner, the genesis of the movement.
Yeah.
And you tried to, you did run for office one time?
Yeah, I sure did. I ran against the current mayor of Mason City, Bill
Schickel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love Bill. He's a great guy. He and I had an agreement, kind of a silent agreement. This is before the division thing came up. We won't trash each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And, that's honorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you state your platform and I'll state mine. Very well known. He beat me by 300 votes.
Oh, wow.
That's like 3 votes. You lose, you lose,
Yeah.
But I felt pretty good about it because I said, well, gee whiz, I figured he would just swamp me. In 1,000 or 2,000, something like that.
Yeah.
And it came down to the wire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I said, well, that's interesting.
And you did not want to try it again?
I tried it again.
Okay.
But I got beat out by Sharon Steckman at the preliminary.
Okay.
So the county, and that's one thing I found out about politics. If you run once and you don't run again because nobody wants you.
Not true, though. There's a lot of people who try to run it, they lose it, they come back, they win.
I know.
That's interesting. And I'm assuming you have a good relationship with Sharon as well?
Oh, yeah. Great person.
That's interesting that you run against those 2 people and they beat you, but now you have great relationship with them.
Oh, yeah. That's what I do. I don't want to run against you because I think you're a bad person. I want to do better than what you're doing. The public doesn't accept it.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes,
And that was the end of your political career?
Right.
Right there, you say, this is it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it again.
Well, I spent too much money.
No return.
No return. No return. On Bill, I think I spent about $4,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and posters and all of this stuff you got to do out there, advertisement and all that stuff.
Oh, man, you can't be that cheap if you want to be in politics.
I know it.
$4,000 today is nothing. What is your message for Mason City in general?
Well, Mason City going to have to change their politics, get rid of the apathy as it relates to politics. If you look at the turnout on the elections, local elections, it's terrible.
Yeah,
terrible. And so when that happens, you've got a small group of people who control your destiny. Property taxes have gone up. They keep throwing away money on this downtown project. That's my opinion, and I think it's the opinion of a lot of people. But the folks won't vote somebody into office that's going to say, we're going to be practical about this and stop spending money until we get something accomplished.
Yeah.
Something happens, then the taxpayers of Mason City are going to foot the bill because they're going to have to hire the lawyers to bail the city out of the
mess. Yeah.
The apathy is here, and the apathy's got to disappear, and the people got to take responsibility that they got to go to the polls and put people on that city council that understand what's going on and are not tied in with the system. The system is to spend money, to spend your tax money to accomplish my goal, and if my goal is my pocketbook. You can't revive downtown Mason City. I grew up here from 41 all the way up. Mm-hmm. We had businesses from probably 12th Street south to 16th Street north on both sides, churches all over the place, the whole thing. That whole system is gone now. When these stores go closed, they build and sit there and they wait for somebody else to come in and do it. They got enough business people in Mason City that can find something,
they can do
some operation for it to go in there.
Yeah, they can get the tax break right here in town instead of giving to people coming out of town. Yeah.
But they're going to have to face up to the fact that the system's not going to get any better unless they get out and vote, get people in there going to do the right job.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for the interview.
Yeah, this was great. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to do this. Thank you again, and be safe out there.
You too.
All right.